of it.
Yeah. I think. Too.
Calling the Southeast Polk Board of Education meeting to order on March 9th at 5:30 p.m. Karen?
Lori,
Yes.
Rick,
Here.
Bridget,
Here.
Tom, Brett,
Here.
Chad, Whitney,
Here. All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we need to omit item 3D, to set the public hearing on the levy. I put that in our update last week. That's already been done. So we don't need to do it twice.
All right, I need a motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. Karen?
Rick,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Whitney,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes. All right, next up, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board Member Handy, would you like to read the district vision and mission, please?
Sure. Southeast Polk, learn, lead, live, success for college, career, civic life. Engage all students in learning a challenging curriculum delivered through quality instruction.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we would like to recognize the Southeast Polk girls wrestling team. Come on in. Are you the coach?
I am the coach. My name is Dwayne Myers. I'm the head girls wrestling coach.
Come on in here,
Southeast
you
Polk
guys.
Girls.
And what would you like to tell us about this first time ever girls wrestling team at Southeast Polk?
Well, one, I'm just really proud of the growth and development of all of these girls throughout the course of the year. We had a really successful season. And I'm just looking forward to the future because it's only going to grow.
That's wonderful. And we're very proud of you. Every meet, you just carried yourself so gracefully and wonderful and like a great team. And
You guys want to go through and introduce yourself?
My name is Bella Briselli, and I'm a junior. I'm Emily Herman, and I'm a junior.
I'm Abby Nelson and I'm a freshman.
I'm Ava Brady, and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Bella Mercega and I'm a freshman. I'm Kristen. I'm Raven Nicholson, I'm a senior.
I'm Hallelujah, I'm a sophomore.
Sarah Slade, I'm a freshman.
State champion.
Chris Ellsbury. I'm Sheldon Shaw. I'm a freshman.
wonderful. Congratulations.
Cam on a stick.
And we're gonna take a picture with you if you guys want to stand up here and
Thanks.
just face out to the audience.
Yes, you can grab the one on the stick if you want. Yeah. Maggie made extras.
And is Joan in the picture?
Shorter,
The
the tall one running in.
You're gonna have Chad in the.
You're gonna look too high.
Or wait, behind you.
Gotta be shorter than that.
Oh, yeah, here, I have the best card profession.
Congratulations, girl.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being the first team ever at Southeast Polk.
Yes.
And
the
it's
great work.
Women's History Month, so you are.
There you go, you have made
young women who
history.
Have made history.
You want to bet the other night? Yeah.
good
to see you. You're great guy. Right, state champion, wow. Promise you won't transfer anywhere.
Southeast Polk for life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two things I want to say before we move on.
That's a little overboard.
One, it's our Southeast Polk Superintendent's birthday, so we want to wish our superintendent a very happy birthday today. And then and then I've got some comments. For the words of State Representative Ross Wilburn last night to our LGBTQ students and staff, you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Don't give up. At Southeast Polk, we will continue to work hard to make Southeast Polk more welcoming, each and every day. That's all. And do we have anybody else that would like to make public comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, I need a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And before we vote on that, again, to the staff that is leaving, I want you to know that we very much appreciate you from Southeast Polk, and we will miss you. Thank you very much for your time spent at Southeast Polk. Okay, Karen.
Bridget,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Whitney,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
All right, moving on to old and new business, item A, which is approval for the sale of shed and portable buildings. We need a motion. Are you gonna talk too, huh?
Just
Can I get a motion?
Here, I'll move to approve the sale of the shed and portable buildings.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Good evening, board. As part of the building and grounds warehouse and bus parking lot expansion project, there are a couple of buildings behind the old district office that would be demoed. Otherwise, instead of having them demoed and paying for that cost, we're going to try to sell them online. So there is I would call it a mobile unit, an auxiliary shed behind there we need to use for some training. That will be gone. And there's also a shed that holds some of our grounds equipment. So those two pieces we're trying to sell. Included in that narrative, there is a bus that Mr. Schultz would like to sell as well at this point in time. So we're going to throw that on the online auction as well.
Very good. Anybody have questions?
Do we have a spot for the storage that we're getting rid of the shed? Is there a spot that material can be moved into?
Yeah, they'll be transferred to a different location, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, Karen?
Brett,
Yes.
Whitney,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
All right, next up, item B, we're gonna set the public hearing for the 23-24 budget. And we're gonna set that hearing for April 13th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve the administration's recommendation of the board to set a date of the public hearing for the fiscal 2024 budget for April 13th, 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, Karen.
Whitney,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
All right, item C, we're gonna set the public hearing for plans and specs for the district warehouse and bus parking project. Can I get a motion? That hearing is gonna be for March 30th, which is our next board meeting.
I'll make a recommendation that we approve the administration's recommendation for the board to set a public hearing of March 30th, 2023 for the building and grounds warehouse and bus parking lot expansion project.
Just to
Second.
clarify, are you making a recommendation or a motion just for the record?
Okay, a motion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Setting a public hearing.
Yeah, I should have worded that.
I mean,
better.
it's-
Yeah,
It's probably not a big deal, but
no, we need to be correct. Thank you, Brett.
So I got a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Karen?
Lori,
Yes,
Rick,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Whitney,
yes. All right, so we're moving down to item E, which is approval of the roof bids. Can I get a motion to approve the roof bids?
Motion to approve roof bids. Looks like
Thank
through
you.
academic academy roofing and sheet metal for junior high and high school.
Thank you.
Yes, the roof bids were received back on last week, February 23rd. We had 3 vendors actually submit. There was 1 vendor that did not meet all the requirements of the bid. The bids, all of themselves were a bit higher than what we anticipated they would be. $500,000 is normally what we would budget for this particular section of our projects. We'll revise some of the work that's going to be done next year, but moving forward for this particular bid, we'd like to do both the junior high school and also the alternate build of the 4 Mile Elementary School project.
Do we need to do a new motion, including the 4 Mile Elementary School, or are we good?
That's all included as part of the recommendation. If that was a motion to.
I understand that, but it wasn't in the motion, which is why I was wondering.
That was it. Yeah, my computer went off as soon as and I can make that new motion to include 4 Mile Elementary with the high school and junior high.
And the same second? Yep. Okay. Why do you think there's $100,000 difference in the bids?
I can't tell you. I don't know if you've ever seen polyvinyl roofing before that on any of the projects here. Do you recall? So I'm not exactly sure. I know the price for materials, if I recall back to the actual bid documentation, there was a little bit of difference in that pricing. Academy Roofing has done a lot of business with the school district over the past several years. But I'm not exactly sure what the difference is.
So they do a good job and we haven't had any issue with them in the past?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is anyone else aware of any issue?
I've not had any issues.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? All right, Karen?
Rick,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Whitney,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes. All right, moving on to topics for discussion. We are going into English learners at Southeast Polk.
Good evening, board. Happy to have here tonight with us one of the members of our teaching and learning team. This is Stephanie Laird. She is the learning supports coordinator. In part of that role, she helps coordinate services for English learners. She also works with gifted education, but she's here tonight to talk about English learners. It's a growing population here at Southeast Polk that brings in wonderful culture and diversity to our district. And she'd like to share a current status of what that looks like at Southeast Polk.
Good evening, board. As Dr. Latham said, I serve as a learning supports coordinator. And at Southeast Polk, we have seen an increase in our cultural and linguistic diversity. And as you can see on the graphics that Lincoln is passing out, at count date, so in October, we had 290 students that were identified as English learners. The number fluctuates, and some principals would even say weekly, but it does fluctuate. To date. As of this afternoon, we were at 299, but again, it fluctuates. So on average, it's about 290 students we serve. On the right, you can see the historical comparison. We have had a jump from last year to this year, but it's been increasing over the past few years. These students bring with them funds of knowledge that enrich our staff in our classrooms, and we get to learn from them and celebrate, again, that cultural and linguistic diversity they bring. We have 34 languages represented at Southeast Polk. The top 10 languages within our program, you can see listed there. And there, of the top 5 languages within the state, we have 4 of those represented here at Southeast Polk. And so you can see kind of in rank order, the top 10 that we have there. Moving on, kind of to look at the numbers by grade, you can see that the largest kind of group is at our elementaries. Kindergarten and first grade have in the 40s, all the rest of the grade levels are in the 20s. And then once we get to the high school, we're in like 12 to 14 per grade level. So definitely our elementaries have the highest numbers. And one of our former teachers at Mitchellville, where I used to work, said Mitchellville, and I would explain this to Southeast Polk, is like a slow cooker. And so once they're in our system, once they're in our program, they're getting our instruction, they're gonna have their needs met. And so I think that speaks to why we see a larger percentage at the elementaries, but then as they progress through, they get that quality instruction, we see them exit the program. And so by the time they get to high school, a lot of them have exited, which is fantastic. The way they exit is by taking the ELPA, the English Language Proficiency Assessment, and they're actually taking that right now. The window closes after spring break, and that's the exit criteria. It's also the entrance criteria. Get identified as an English learner, through the screener, and then to get out of it, we administer the summative assessment. Some ways that we meet our students' needs. So as with staff, we have 9 teachers who provide that language acquisition instruction. So the ESOL teachers, you may see, so English for speakers of other languages, but really every single classroom teacher in our district is a teacher of English learners by virtue of getting to have them in their classrooms. And so our ESOL teachers provide that language acquisition instruction, whereas classroom teachers are using language to teach the content. A couple things I would love to highlight for instruction opportunities that we have in both the elementary and secondary buildings. We have a tier 3 intervention called EL Foundations of Math. And that's for students with sporadic, limited, or interrupted formal education. Perhaps they were coming from a refugee camp, they were in a area where there's a natural disaster or flood, so there wasn't, or earthquakes, so schools weren't open, and now they're here with us. And so we administer a screener called the Batista, and if students are 2 or 3 grade levels behind their age level peers, when we give that, we can put them in this intervention. And then once students are in EL Foundations of Math, which a lot of times get shortened to EL Math, we see that they progress at a rate of 2 to 3 years of learning in 1 academic year. So we get those gaps closed really quickly. And that's because, so at Southeast Polk, we have priority standards that we teach. Within this intervention, we have super priority standards. So those critical must have math concepts and skills. And then those are really focused on through that quality instruction. So we see those gaps close. And because we've seen such great things happen with EL Foundations of Math, at the high school last year, they added EL Foundations of Science, because just like with math, where you have specific vocabulary that might be different than in any other subject, science has that as well. And so that's still getting worked on. We're in year 1.5 for that. So I don't have the exciting results yet to share about how quickly students progress through those standards, but we will definitely get there. Other supports that we have our culture fairs. Willowbrook just did theirs a couple of weeks ago. 4 Mile did one last year, where it was like an equity, culture, diversity fair. And a lot of times they use an organization called Cultural to bring in speakers. And then we have our college and trades visits. I know we had our trades fair last week. And so getting English learners, as well as all students, the opportunity to see options for college and careers once they leave us. And finally, just to highlight some community supports that we have for our students and families. So we host a family registration night every year. This year, it's going to be May 2nd. And we provide interpreters to help kind of fill out our online registration, because it can be cumbersome. And it's right now only in English and Spanish. But we have, obviously, as you can see, speakers of other languages. So it's a time where they can fill out the online registration, as well as find out kind of health forms they might need if they're going to do activities at the high school or junior high, if that's another cumbersome form. And so our interpreters can help with that. So it's a set aside night, but we have interpreters that can help with registration at any time. So speaking of that, our network of interpreters, they've been dispatched a lot this week with parent-teacher conferences. And so we have interpreters who are actually district employees. We have ones that are community members. And then we also have an agency that we partner with, is with 34 languages. We can't always cover those in-house, if you will. And so a huge shout out and thank you to them. And then Heartland AEA is a fantastic partner. We've gotten mini grants from them to bring in additional resources, instructional materials to help host our EL family registration night. And so that's been a great community partnership for us as well. And that is just some highlights on how we're serving our English
How
learners.
many would you say are testing this week to test out?
So every student who's
Every
an
single
English learner,
one.
yep, we have to
They
get that
always
every year.
test, okay.
Yes.
And then what's the success rate? Like, when do they? How many years does it take for them to be comfortable in the language that they test out?
So it depends by student. Typically, research shows 3 to 5 years to become proficient in English. Certainly when we have our younger elementary students, they're learning language all the time. And so we
Constant.
see them pick it up relatively quickly. We had, I think, 15 students exit last year, could be 20, but we do celebrate, and then the different buildings do develop certificates and different things that they do to kind of recognize that exiting the program, which it's sad for the teachers because they don't
Yeah.
want to see them leave, but we're excited and we know we'll still see them in the buildings anyway.
Yeah.
Is there any specific event like in this past year that you think has contributed to the rapid or the jump that we've seen, or has there been an influx of immigrants from specific communities, or? I think if you look at the growth and what we anticipated for growth, Jason, you want to scroll up to the top. I think it is a pretty big jump, but during COVID, it kind of stabilized. And so I think had we had normal growth, we wouldn't have seen such a big jump from last year to this year. But I don't know that we've seen any significant group that has come in. One thing that we've noticed is that a lot of families will move to the metro area to find the services and the jobs. And once they get on their feet and feel comfortable, then they tend to branch out across Polk County and the metro area. So you're seeing some of that as well. Thank you.
It sounds like a really quality program, which is fantastic. I'm glad to see there's such a large number in the elementary schools that we can spend a lot of time with for that 3 to 5 years, but how big of a challenge is it for the 19% that come to us as high school students?
We
Is it-
do have 2 teachers, 2 ESL. So in
Yeah.
elementaries, we have 1, and Spring Creek, we have 1, junior high, we have 1 ESL teacher. At high school, we have 2, which does help. And then they do a lot of pushing and co-teaching when possible, especially within math and science.
Right.
Since those are kind of have more of that tier 2 or 3 vocabulary. But like I said, and when we had our solution tree speaker here earlier this year, he reminded every teacher that they are all teachers of English learners.
Right,
So we're
Right.
all collectively working towards this.
Well, I guess the biggest challenge would, do we have any of them that move in as seniors? That would be really hard, I think.
We've had a few.
A few, yeah. Yeah, it'd be hard to, I don't know, give them all the support that you give all the rest of them just in a few months or whatever it is. But
I think
Yeah.
so.
yeah,
Yeah, but our teachers are experts in that language acquisition instruction and knowing how to differentiate and meet the needs of their students, whether it's a newcomer, so someone who has been here for less than a year, or a long-term English learner.
great, thank you.
Anybody else questions?
So with you having 15 on average testing out a year, is that correct?
That was last year.
Last year?
Numbers I can remember. It varies
Okay.
year to year.
Okay, I'm curious how it breaks out. And I know that you said in between 3 and 5 years, it takes for them to get to the point where they can test out. I'm just curious to see, the more data. I want to see, is it males or females who are testing out? Is it, is which cultural group is testing out faster? I just find that to be interesting. So if you happen to get that.
That would be interesting. And
Yeah.
3 to 5, it's not a hard limit.
Yeah, it's
They
not
can
set,
vote for
right.
that. It's just what's.
I mean, you
3
can
to 5
have
is
like
not
a
on
first
average.
grader who tests out immediately because they have a sponge for a brain, but
After this roundabout, the testing, that's certainly something we can do, start to aggregate that data a little bit more.
Yeah.
That across the board.
that would be good.
As
Thank
we
you.
wrap up, I do want to commend Stephanie, as she mentioned, the partnership with AEA. And she has written some Title III grants, and they have such a good partnership that she's been able to get more grant money than we've ever had in the past to
Wow.
continue to extend that community support. And so we've seen a lot of good growth in that area. So
Good job.
thank her for all the work that she does in that area.
Thanks for making a difference. Okay, moving on to the inclement weather days.
Yay.
Right,
Fitting today, right?
Yeah,
right?
Thursday tradition.
yeah. Well, I'll thank you for bringing this up. I think it's an important subject, Dr. Halupnik, and everybody that's involved, but I think we have hours built into our calendar for a reason, and I hope that we use them. And I think using the April 17th Professional Development Day as turning that into a normal school day for those kids would be a no-brainer at this point, because in April, they're right in the middle of their activities. It'd be easy flow for them to keep going. When you measure, if we added on a day after Memorial Day with an April date, I mean, the quality of learning is going to be much higher in April than it is after Memorial Day. So if the teachers need a professional development days, maybe it can be one of those days, their last few days, hopefully not the last day. That would be a hard thing for the teachers to do, but as long as it's not the last day, if it was, there, but I know we're going to talk about it at our next meeting. I just want to share my feelings. I hope we take care of, I'm glad we didn't have a fourth day today, but use 2 of the days with our hours that we have built in, and use the other third day with the professional development day would be what I'd like to share as my opinion. You guys can all share what you think should be done.
I agree with you. I think tacking a day on at the end of the year causes a lot of stress and angst with parents and children, students. I think putting it in April, you're right. Everything is just moving so swiftly along. We might as well just keep that going.
I think, Bridget had suggested we have it as that professional day as an on hold day. So if we encounter an additional snow day where we need to make up a day, we at our March 30th meeting, we put the parents on notice that if we by chance from this day to then have to have another snow day, that we plan that snow day will be made up on that April 17th date. But if we don't need to make up another day, if no more happen, it's perfectly fine. But yes, that's the hope. But if we could give the parents notice so they can plan for that April 17th date as a standby date, if in fact we do incur another snow day.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a contingency, because I do agree extending beyond the end of the school year just is not a very productive time. So we'd rather make that easier on families and teachers and everybody, I think.
If we do end up having to use that date, how does it impact our professional day? What does that create?
I think as Rick said that, or maybe both of you, if we're flexible on that. So if we had it in April or we had it at the end of the year, we can be flexible. So we would still get professional development that we need.
Right.
Right.
And we've had that reflection at the end of the year before, and it has been.
Do we have to then turn around and have the same professional development at the beginning of the school year?
No,
Not the very same lesson?
no. One thing now that the ISASP assessments are online, we find that we are getting our data back right at the end of the school year. And so I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, we were able to take that data and they worked in teams to reflect on their goals and start to write their goals for the school improvement plans for the next year. So oftentimes they come in teams during the summer, like in June or July. But if we have a professional development date at the end of the year, they're able to have those conversations before before they leave school. And they don't get their whole plan written, but they do have a chance to reflect. And I think that reflection piece is so important and start to get a jump start on their goals for the upcoming school year. So yeah, we'll still have PD at the beginning of the year, but it'll be adjusted based on the fact that we got that reflection piece done.
At the end of the school year.
Right.
If we moved it to the end of the
Yeah.
school.
That we can
You
be
know,
flexible with that.
sounds much more productive,
Yeah.
actually.
April 17th should be a school day. In my
Well,
opinion, yeah.
but if we don't need it,
What we do need, we have 3 days to make up.
no, we don't have
Yeah.
to make up those days.
Well,
Hour wise, we're only had 4 hours right now.
mhm, right,
So if we miss one more day, we have to make up a day, but
Right.
otherwise we can not make up those days. So that's why I'm suggesting, as Bridget suggested, we
Mhm.
hold the 17th as a potential makeup day.
mhm.
If we have one more snow day, we would have to make up a day.
But if we use it as a student day, we'd still have all those hours as a cushion in case something happened in April after the PD day.
You mean like
So
a
you're-
freak snowstorm?
Yeah.
You're saying you want to go ahead with that?
I
just out of
think,
Precaution.
yeah, I think just like Dr. Latham said, having the PD day after May 26th, the last day of school for the kids, would fit in with the teacher schedule fine, as long as it's not the last day. And it would just flow better, a learning day in April versus, and like you're saying, we wouldn't have to make it up at all, but when we're only at 4 hours, I get a little nervous, only having a 4-hour cushion. That's just my opinion, but when the PD day can, like she just said, could be used either day, why not we just continue our education in April? And I think most, if not all, the teachers would be fine with having it after the school year's over, and they could set their goals for the following year.
So, just to make sure I hear you
Yeah.
correct, so basically, we're building another day.
Right, of cushion, yeah.
So when you look at one regular school day, it's 6.5 hours.
Right.
If we have 4 hours left,
Right,
are we really wanting to come back for 2.5 hours? I mean, essentially, that's what we're doing. We're
Right.
coming back for 2.5 hours and we're making time up anyway.
right,
And I'm
Yeah.
for scratching all three. I mean, I'm
Right.
good with that, but if it snows during our, obviously, we're talking about it now. So when March 30th comes and we vote on this,
right, right,
you could have the, are we going to make up, what if there's 2 snow days?
right.
I mean, we've got to come back one day.
Yeah.
If it's after April 17th, so what's our plan for the snow day after April 17th? Because it did snow in May several years ago, just
Yep.
in case you didn't remember.
I'm
so.
not planning on it snowing anymore after.
That way,
April
if we
17th.
use April 17th.
I guess
as a
Lori
day,
has spoken, so there'll be no more snow.
give us more hours.
We've done that earlier.
I'm the weatherman. By March 30th, the worst should be over.
And anything we could do for our teachers after what they've been through the last 4 years or 3 years. All they did, and so many teachers, as you guys all know from visiting schools and talking to them, do so much after school and on weekends to prepare. I just think that we have to not only look at these days for our parents, but also consider how we're gonna treat our teachers and all the appreciation, like you said, when we had the resignations, it hurts, and we have such great staff. And what can we do to tell our teachers, thank you,
I have a question. If we have school on April 17th and extend and move that learning time, does that bring teachers back after Memorial Day when they wouldn't have, or would they be coming back anyway, or how
They come
does,
back anyway.
because last year that was a big concern.
They have a work day after,
They do already.
right on that Tuesday following right now on the calendar.
That's what I
So
thought.
they have 190
Make sure.
hours,
95 days.
195 days.
Contractual.
100
Right.
And that's where things do get a little confusing. I want to make sure I say this just so everybody's 100% clear with it. As we're talking about the student side of things and we're talking days, we're kind of all used to that because that's how it's always been, but we're on an hours calendar according to the Department of Ed. So it's not just missing a day. If we would have, let's say, a fog day in May where we had to go 2 hours late, those 2 hours count against the 4 buffer that we have right now also. So it wouldn't have to just be a snowstorm, but I just want to say that so that we're all
Yeah.
clear that it's instructional hours.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I mean, I'm kind of with Rick. I mean, I'd rather have a buffer than not have a buffer. I mean, I'm looking at you guys, but I mean that.
They have to work anyway, Brad.
No, I know, but I mean, they're the ones that have to, they're the ones that have to pass it down to the people that work to
Well,
say, "Oh, that's why you're working April 17th.
Setting student perspective.
Yeah,
I
please do.
didn't, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't even know we had no school on April 17th, so I don't think many students would notice if that day was moved to a regular school day. And I know as a senior, I don't have to make up those days unless it hits a certain amount, but from being a student in the past, it's really disheartening when you get told you have to come after that Memorial Day. And like it was mentioned before, you don't get a whole lot of quality education in that day because finals are normally already taken or they're bumped back a little bit. So I personally think that if you made that April 17th a regular school day, the students wouldn't mind too much and it would make everyone happier in the end.
And we'd have,
Except the seniors.
Yeah.
They don't
But-
care.
it's Monday, what would they do?
Yeah.
Sleep?
I also think it is very close after spring break, so I think students are they're refreshed after having that week off and then
Right.
being able, like, I wouldn't really notice if I had to go that extra day.
Thank you, Macy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'd rather have 12-hour buffer than 4-hour and then we're,
12-hour buffer.
yeah, if you
Okay,
take, well. I
6
guess-
hours and 4,
And if,
10.
like Dirk said, if we have a fog day or whatever type of day.
Right, yeah, anything can make,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, who knows? This is Iowa, just so
Yeah.
you know.
Getting
They don't live here.
You know, we
It'll
can
change.
cross our fingers
Go
that
outside,
that
it might be,
So I do like the idea of having a plan B, but I think just making a plan A and going with it's a good idea, especially since, I mean, the teachers on their last day, they clean up and
Yeah.
get their, okay, so they could. I don't think the professional development is the entire time. So they
Well,
could
hopefully it's
still
not
do
gonna be on the
something.
last day.
Right,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
right, yeah, so there we go.
Professional development day and then the work day.
Okay, well, there you go. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then maybe they could help them whenever they come back, because I sure as heck, whenever I was in school, I would just, everything would go out of my brain whenever I was done with school. And then trying to have to remember in July, something that happened at the beginning of the school year is, I think that would be more difficult and you would have better results on the review of the data if you were closer to the end of the school year.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna throw one more thing out for you to think about, because, like I said, we live in Iowa. Who knows what could happen, but April 17th is also, in the middle of our, state assessment period and the time when we're giving ISAP. So the more routine we're, keeping things going, I think that would be beneficial as well, but, after 2020, we can adapt to.
You can pivot.
So we'll make it work.
Very good.
so just to clarify, so you being going to the school the 17th would be beneficial for with the testing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Any other comments, you guys, before we move on?
No.
All right, moving on to item C, fiscal year 24 budget discussion, part 2. Drum roll, please.
Just a couple of changes since we last talked, a couple of new things that came up and have been resolved. Again, just to share with you a couple of reminders here, reiterations, state supplemental aid was set at 3%. That increases our student cost per pupil or to $222 for a total of $7,635 for next year. Budget authority doesn't change. Let me try to make this. Is that enough time? We stay where we're at as far as our budget available for the 23-24 school year. No changes. Income surtax has been updated. $4.2 million increase or 7.8% increase. You may not have known, but out of the families and taxpayers within the Southeast Polk community, they reported $58.6 million of taxable income this past year. The state error has been corrected. That actually was a little bit more than I thought it would be.
Of course it was.
I thought it was going to be the neighborhood more of a 1%. It's actually a 2.25% to change for us. A reduction of about $64.3 million in property valuation. And property tax revenues were going down just short of $1 million. But how the state aid formula works, that gets backfilled with state aid dollars. So we don't lose any money because of this. We also know now through preliminary medical and dental increases, there's just a small 1.5% increase to our medical premium. So that's great. Dental is staying flat. Again, how does it not affect what we get for money? State aid formula tells us based on students and the cost per pupil, this is the total amount of money we get. This goes down a little bit because of property taxes going down. So this state aid portion will go up a little bit. So again, we're not losing revenues. It's just a redirect of money being shared by the state rather than property tax owners. Property valuations. Oh, gosh. That's not going to fit. Property valuations, the change there, you can see. Again, about $64.3 million of change of valuations. Composite tax rate, what changes on here for us? Because of this is just the property tax portions of the tax rate. You can see those reductions in the general fund, management fund, and in the Pebble fund, and then a small increase in the debt service fund. We had to make that schedule work. The tax rate itself stays at $15.44. Again, flat for the past 4 years. A couple things to discuss, and I'll discuss more at the March 30th meeting, assuming there's nothing big that comes through legislation between now and March 30th. I spoke a little bit about committed fund balance in the past. This has taken a portion of our general fund balance and committing them for a specific purpose. What this allows us to do is increase our maximum cash reserve levy for the following year. Not to get too much into the details of what accounting is from the school side. There's 5 pieces of a general fund balance as you see there. And we just opened up committed fund balance for this specifically for probably talk about instructional materials there. So just setting aside money from the fund balance for instructional materials. Also talking about a flexibility account. I kind of introduced this idea with the last board meeting. I'll speak more about this during the March 30th meeting. This uncategorizes the funds that are specific to categorical funds originally presented by the state. This includes preschool dollars, professional development, homeschool assistance, and teacher leadership money. This is money that is currently carried over unused from the past. So it's kind of good to put those in a flexibility account to be used for general purpose fund purposes, which would include wages, salaries, and the other.
So these are things that they had set aside in separate buckets, only specific for certain things
Correct.
to use.
These are
They've
restricted
been
funds.
sitting there unused, and now we can put them in the flexibility account.
Yes, this will be a year-to-year item that I bring to you during the budget process. These balances fluctuate
Right.
annually.
So what do you estimate in that flexibility account?
I'll have some more details at the March
I knew you
30th
were gonna
meeting.
say that.
Budget timeline again, we'll do one more March 30th. Assuming there's no major changes from a legislative standpoint, there's some things that are kind of rumbling, but nothing is really running at this point in time. Public hearing approval, April 13th, and the certified date is April 30th, not May 1st, excuse me, not April 15th, but we'll get it done before the April 15th date. Anyhow. Questions?
So you don't even want to ballpark that flexibility bucket?
I will March 30th, yes.
Thanks, that's helpful.
With that flex account, that would only be spent with board approval, right?
Correct. Every year the
that's a
board
key
will,
point.
yes, every year the board will have to choose to approve the expenditures that have been used from the flexibility account.
For the record, I don't like the use of the red ink on the composite tax rate, just so you know.
I like
That's
it. Kevin.
scary.
I like it.
It's scary,
I don't like it, but I like it.
just to be,
Or
yes.
Cause you can see it. It stands out.
Okay, I think in our conversation tonight about staffing, you can make some really direct connections to some of the things you've already heard, in particular ELL and Kevin's conversation about this flex fund. But currently, we're looking at adding 6.5 FTE to our current staff in the areas that are kind of less listed on the left there. Elementary teacher, 2 of them, 1 in 3rd grade, 1 in kindergarten. EL teacher, our 10th such teacher. Half a district nurse, because currently we have a half a district nurse. And then that would make that job complete. And then a 1.0 project lead the way teacher at Spring Creek, and then a half elementary music, half elementary PE, and a 1.0 homeschool assistance teacher. And you can see where they're kind of going in regard to buildings. Well, only one comment I would have is the kindergarten teacher that we're looking at adding, this person may be at 4 Mile. It's kind of my best guess right now, only because transportation out of 4 Mile is difficult, whereas transportation out or around the city of Altoona is relatively simple because we have lots of buses moving in and around Altoona. But not so many going from the 4 Mile area out to other areas of the district. So if we get an influx of students in kindergarten at 4 Mile, it should be a very appropriate placement, but it doesn't mean that we're dead set on that's where that one will go. That likely, well, definitely they'll follow the students where the students are. Let's see. Any questions about any of the reasons and rationales and so on and so forth? Costs of all the above, obviously we're looking at just over $500,000 in additional certified staff, which is a lot. It's a lot of money for sure. And the reason I color coded them blue, red, and green, actually the reason is pretty simple. It 100% depends on how much money we have. That if the budget's tight, things are tight, we get unfavorable results on the heel of the saving account or voucher or whatever, whatever terminology you want to use. How that goes and how that affects us. If we're thinking about diverting more money away from teachers and putting that money into more substitute pay. Just all the things that go into affecting the big pot of money that we've got will depend on how many people we can hire. And
So you're starting with the blue and working your way down.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Why the homeschool assistance staff member? Why do we need, why do we have to spend more money on homeschool assistance? What's the deal there?
We have more and more students that are
That we
entering
have
homeschool
to.
assistance.
Participate with that
Yep.
aren't on their own, but have registered with the district.
Yes, yes.
So, and what is that entailed when we provide assistance for those homeschool students?
It involves resources, getting resources back and forth between us and families, having that person there as a teaching resource as well. Anything else? What else would you add to that, Joelle?
I think the only thing, that's exactly what's done, something that you are currently adding is, the teachers are offering enrichment classes around STEM, for homeschool, and so we're getting an increase there. We have written a waiver for the past 4 years because they're seeing more families than allocated in the PE. And wanted to see how things settled, after COVID, and as the board mentioned, the numbers continue to go up.
But they're not getting a Southeast Polk diploma. We're just getting funds to assist with homeschool students. And what is the number of homeschool assistants that we help educate? How many is that? And I'm not going to hold you to the number.
Probably about 100.
Okay. So we have one, but we need another.
And we have some that are looking at different types of contracts in the future, so it would be a total FTE when we go through. We have had a waiting list for homeschool assistants for the past 2 years.
How many's on the
We'd like
waiting
to
list?
eliminate that.
How many's on the wait list?
Right now, about 4.
Okay.
But there's others who haven't put their names on the waiting list because they've called and said, sorry, we were told before school started this year.
Okay.
Mr. Horton, the 0.5 elementary music and PE, does that make a full-time person?
No,
No.
no, because current, like, I'll try to use a good example here. Like at Runnels in music, currently we have a 0.5 teacher.
Right.
She works half a day here and then
Right.
half a day at another job.
Right.
She has no desire
Okay.
to move on, and we have no desire to move on from her because she's fabulous.
Right.
So I think we'd be out looking for a halftime teacher.
Okay.
The HSA teacher, did the homeschool bill pass? So I guess what the question is do you foresee that moving up to the blue sooner than where you have it on the list possibility with what's going on in the legislature?
You know, ideally, I'd like to let's go all 6.5. That's perfect. And do I think we have the capability to do that? Yeah, I think we do. But I'm the eternal optimist too. You know, you never know when the bottoms are going to drop out. But yeah, if the rules of the game change, sure. I think it would move it up on our priority list.
So the district nurse, are we hiring a part-time district nurse or are we making the current district nurse full-time?
Yes, that, by making the job a 1.0 position.
Mhm.
See, currently we have a 0.0 district nurse
Okay.
because our district nurse left and then none of our current nurses kind of wanted to split their lives in half, you know, like, I don't know, if I'm the nurse at the high school, I'm not sure doing a half day at the high school and a half day as the district nurse would be a great idea for
Right.
me. Like, hey, how do I really complicate my life? That would be a good way to do it. So we've got limited internal interest in this other half,
Mhm.
but I think once we make it a full 1.0, I think the level of interest will go really high.
And what does a district nurse do?
Oversees everything that we do in our nursing program, top to bottom.
So they're basically above all the school nurses or like
So-
a lead for the school nurses?
I don't know if I'd say they're above them, but I'd say they're with them and that they are the kind of the lead voice
Lead,
among
okay.
equal people.
They do the government paperwork.
Yes.
Filings of.
Yep.
So they take care of the program.
Medicare.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank
Yep.
you.
You know, among even different things like a training pops up like 2 years ago. We had this idea that we wanted to involve all of our nurses and some of our teachers in what's called the Stop the Bleed initiative. And it really is when something catastrophic happens at a location anywhere, you know, on your campus or in your district or whatever, we would have trained people
Right.
who literally could stop, you know, folks from losing significant amounts of blood.
Right.
So we did a lot of training in that area and we bought a lot of materials and tourniquets and so on and so forth. And I know afterward, our nurses felt a whole lot better about, wow, if there was,
It's a good.
I don't
training.
know, a car accident or something in front of our school, we could really respond.
Mhm.
So, but somebody has to coordinate all that. And that's really what maybe the most tangible thing that the district nurse does is move those initiatives forward. I know Amy Chabahar was in front of you all about like 1 million times during COVID, but since then, we've done, you know, every AED that's in all of our schools has been updated, upgraded, and again, somebody's got to do that work, and that's really the kind of the objective of the district nurse.
And I guess just more for knowledge, we used to have that position, and then the budget cuts back in 2011. We reduced it and we've been doing a halftime for
Okay.
everyone. So I think it's a good move. My question is that 42.5, is that just equal is that a little more pay for that person or is that just what? nurses
It's,
get
it's
paid?
just half what we would pay a 1.0 teacher. Like, or a nurse, you know, our teachers and nurses are on the same scale. So, but if you like, look at the 1.0 kindergarten teacher makes 85,000. Obviously half an FTE of a district nurse is half of that. That's
So
where
do we
really
have
the
the
cost-
other 42.5?
Pardon?
Do we have the other 42.5 already? Like if we have a 0.5 person, do we have the other half of that to make it a full person? Do we have that money sitting there?
Yes, it's currently in our budget, just not occupied by a human being.
Got you.
Okay. And you know, obviously under future considerations, as we reconfigure our grades, you know, something may come up. I really wouldn't even guess what it might be. But when you put people who have different certifications together, sometimes the puzzles that our principals put together are really complicated. And if one person leaves, oh gosh, look at what now is, we're gonna have to bring somebody else on to do some of that work where we may have somebody who has multiple certifications and can do lots of different things. But if that person goes to another school, it may leave a hole. I'm really hopeful that it won't, and we won't have to really kind of exercise that. But I included that on the list just kind of as a placeholder that as we move forward. So it's not a big surprise and people don't go, what are you talking about? I thought we had enough teachers. We do have enough teachers. It's just they may not be in the right spots. If that makes sense.
Yep.
I'm sorry,
No.
under your future considerations, the top three there, if they're not met this upcoming school year, that obviously when the new middle school opens, that would be a major
Yes.
need, right?
Yeah, that would be a
Next.
conversation
Yeah.
we certainly would have, and we'd come
Yeah.
all the way back and say, okay, Kevin, what's the budget look like? And he would tell me no, and then I would start to whine to him, and then he'd get sick of it.
Right,
And he would either quit talking to me or just give me what I want, so I'll leave him alone.
okay.
That's kind of how it works.
And Joellen, I'll probably send you some more questions on the homeschool assistants, just, okay? But I'm not gonna ask, I just want more info. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome,
you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, we're gonna move over to the IASB Ambassadors Program. I'm gonna look for Bridget to give us a rundown of the 2 lovely days.
Oh, boy. So gosh, it feels like it was a while ago now, on a very snowy weekend, much like today. There was the IASB ambassador training, which was an intensive 1.5 day training to learn to enhance communication skills. So the goal of the IASB in holding this program is to train up and with the intent of deploying people to represent the interests and of the schools in the IASB. So to act as spokespeople, of course, with the, not there's kind of an asterisk by that one, to train as a spokesperson if called upon to be a spokesperson, since the board president is the de facto spokesperson for individual boards, but to function in that that position if need be, if say it was agreed upon by the board president. But not just that, more to kind of help communicate priorities with different constituencies, like the media and with sorry, I'm just stumbling all over it tonight. It's been a long day. And with the legislature, and doing, kind of working on skills to communicate and advocate for that. And that we kind of talked about, a lot of those skills we put into practice on that day at the Hill. But really, it really taught us how to take a message and keep the focus in our conversation on that message that we want to get across and how to support that effectively. There was a lot of practice, a lot of interesting, challenging exercises, including some camera work where some people, thankfully not myself, got to be guinea pigs in front of the entire group. It's a lot harder than you think it's going to be, but they were great. And yeah, it was really good. And I look forward to more development. I think this is just kind of the beginning of their ambassadorship program, but it
So
was
teaching you about presenting the district's message, not your own message,
right,
correct?
correct.
And 2 days of that.
2 days of that.
It was
District-
also about presenting the ISB's general message too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, ISB. So you could, it was skills that you could use for either purpose, but not as a spokesperson to represent either whatever group you're representing, not your own. So,
Right, on behalf of the ISB or on behalf of the school district.
yep,
That's who you'd be representing. And
exactly.
they helped you.
Yeah.
And-
It was put on by, oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
Wickstead Communication, which is a really, a very well-respected communications group with, I think it was Andy Garman from, who formerly of KCCI, and Kate, I can't remember her last name. A couple, professional news people, communicators who really know their stuff, who did it. The second day, we did have more conversation with the IASB regarding like limitations of communication, specifically when it is appropriate to act as a spokesperson. And we tackled specifically some topics that are trickier areas like social media and how to navigate that space or how to stay out of it as well. So
Stay out of it.
yeah. So, yeah, it was really informative. It was, I look forward to more.
Good. Did they say when they're gonna have another workshop, a weekend long
We
workshop?
don't have a date yet.
But they are looking for more workshops or.
I believe
talking
so.
about it?
Yeah, yeah. This is wasn't a one and done. Right.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about it is that they had some priorities that we started working on already, and one of them was increasing preschool funding. And then also the teacher workforce. And so they had actually sent out 2 calls to action already. And one of them was on preschool, and I think that was 2 weeks ago. And the latest one just came out a couple of days ago. So they are using, I think there's 30 individuals, but the 30 of us to communicate with our legislators and letting them know that as a unit, we agree with teacher workforce and with preschools. So it was a great
And I think
learning
they're
ability.
asking all board members on those. I
Yeah.
mean,
The call
we
to
all got
action.
the call to action for the preschool last week, beginning of the week, and then the second one came, which I think I was just tied up in meetings and I couldn't write, but
Yeah.
I know more than a lot of people contacted our school
State
district
senator.
representative and
Yeah, it was I was just looking to see if I could find it really quick, but it was specifically targeted to our Senate representation.
Yep.
So, yeah,
So
Very
just
good.
to clarify, so like our president and vice president are our spokesperson. We have Ms. Christensen, the district's spokesperson, or Dirk, whoever he chooses, and that's, I think, who he chooses most of the time would be. So I guess what would be the purpose of this ambassador? Is this just for training, I guess, or how does that?
to make sure that we're getting effectively communicating the needs of public education in Iowa and more than it has been.
and we all got the invitation to sign.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
I just,
Right.
yeah, I guess I wasn't understanding exactly what it was for, because if we have something that's gonna, needs to be addressed, that's handled with
Right.
those three positions or four.
Right.
And one way I look at it is, it's a good way for not the leaders, but others to have that experience ahead of time for.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's not. I
But
just-
also, I understand where the IASB is coming from, trying to get more people out there, sharing their information versus misinformation. And that's what's been going on. And I think getting 30 of them together for 2 days, each of them, and having them be their voice is 30 more people that they have or don't have to share the message of the IASB.
One of the big outcomes was that the preschool legislation that Winnie mentioned. They gave that to us as an exercise, not expecting any legislation to be proposed this session. And because of 30 of us then deploying, or it wasn't quite 30, not everybody from that training was able to attend down the hill. But from the impact and multiplying their voice, their legislation was raised. It didn't make it through, but it was a beginning for a long-term goal or a long short-term.
And that was kind of the goal, that the ISB wanted to at least get it out in front of the legislators so that they could put it on the docket for next year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that was huge. It was really fun to talk
Yeah.
about that. So
I appreciate you.
it was
spending
Katie
both
Ward, by the
days
way.
and-
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Katie Ward.
Yep,
Yes,
yep.
thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
And Chad was there day 2. He had
And
wrestling.
the legislation is SF 480. And it's about doing public note, and Kevin, you might be interested in this. It's about doing public notification on a website instead of through the newspaper. So there's more transparency and more people can see it and. But
Yeah.
yes, that's expensive.
So this doesn't, it seems like it's almost counterproductive of when we do our legislative thoughts, what are our goals for the legislative? We do that as a group. And that's kind of, and then we share that with
Right.
IASB. So,
They get that from us, from all the districts.
So the
Yeah.
legislative priorities that they identified that then directed our training, the things we were training on are those are developed from each board's individual legislative priorities. So it's whatever those top 4 or 5 priorities that raise to the top from all the boards. And it seems like they're all pretty.
So the ISB has their own set of priorities. And then each school district has their set of priorities, but they're mostly funneled all up together. Like, I think our school district has 1 or 2 that are different from the general ones for the ISB. But there's nothing that we talk about as ambassadors that the school districts haven't already agreed on. So those legislative priorities that we talk about next year are going to be completely different. May be completely different than what we talked about this year.
And we're not going to, isn't that the point? The point isn't to replace any type of communication that is coming from the district, and the intent is not that, like, Whitney or Chad or I will go out and start talking. It's only when asked to do it, only when basically you have being deputized to do so. So whether it's like someone who they need someone for an interview on the news and say Lori's not available or Rick's not available, president, vice president, or Jeannie, they want a different voice, a representation from the board. And this communication training also works with different types of organizations and has worked with individual school districts when there's been a difficult topic that's come up, and they've helped them learn how to speak about that.
They have like crisis reputation management, strategic communication. It's really interesting what they have. So, and
Cool.
Chad was on the camera day 2 because they sent that video out. So, and I was on the camera day 1 and it was,
we need to change this in our policy of how we do that then.
We're not changing anything right now. They're just, they just went and learned about representing the IASB and the district, and there are 3 newer board members, and so I think it's.
No, I get that,
Yeah.
but it sounds like we're on the verge of changing something, so.
I'll
I
let
don't-
you know
I don't
if there's
think
any
so.
changes.
I don't
Brett,
believe
swear.
that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just an
I'm
experience.
not against it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, do we need that? I'm trying to
Yeah.
learn about your.
Nobody has
After
free
discussion.
reign. Nobody has free reign to go out and talk for
Yeah.
this.
No. Mm-mm.
So then explain to me how then you. You're not available, then. You just appoint somebody that you're free. I mean, that's the problem that you're gonna get into.
There's no issue that's come up right now, so I'm not gonna worry about it.
So
Alright.
for example, I got an email asking me to reach out to our legislator about a specific topic, and it was more about, oh gosh. It was to Bill Gustav about preschools, because he is on the committee. So I sent him an email and said, hey, we're interested in increasing preschool funding, and then I copied and pasted and sent it, and that was it. So that was from the IASB, but we would not, Bridget, Chad and I would not speak for the
Yeah,
board.
I'm not. That's not
So,
what I'm just, it's a
You and I can
discussion.
talk about it.
Do we need to put it in policy?
Yeah, we
No.
can talk, you
That's-
and I
that's
can
the
talk about it,
question.
so I can see where
So-
you're going later. What you want, what your concern is.
There's no concern. I'm just
Okay.
discussing this thing.
No, I'm glad she spent both
It's a
days there.
discussion, Lori. I know you like to cut discussions off, but this is, do we need to put this in a policy, in our policy of how,
I don't believe so.
Thank you, though.
all right? Yeah,
Yes.
my goodness sakes.
Yes, absolutely. Should I take a picture of you?
Now my face is probably red
Yes,
because
it
you're
is.
frustrating, but anyway. Is it 4-lane or 2-lane?
Too.
Yeah. Okay, we have a closed session.
Air
Yes.
conditioning in the restroom.
I need a motion to adjourn, please.